Thank you for listening to the field report for June 13th, 2017. A lot of the stories I'm updating here is just stories I've found on the internet. I'll put all the information below so you can double check for yourself, because I don't want to be not accurate here, and I can only report on so many topics at one time. So I put the additional information below where I've found the sources of information. Let's talk about starting with August 21st. We've been following this story regarding the big story of the eclipse that's going to be going across the United States from Oregon to South Carolina. As you can see from this image, they call it the path of totality, and this is a huge event because we haven't had a total solar eclipse that would literally stretch across the United States. Okay, so with that said, this event occurs August 21st, 2017. So we're talking about little over a month from now. A lot of other things are happening in the same period. Let's just start with what's going on the last week and a half. There's been several reports, and I don't know if any of you know this, but Planet X is approaching into our it's already in our solar system. In fact, these images will illustrate that. Again, if you want to prove or disprove, that's not my question. I'm just looking at what I see on the feed. That arrow is directed towards the asteroid belt, and you can see some metrics and measurements, and this is obviously screenshots. I also found this at BP Earthwatch. I followed him several different times. So when I look at that, and I'm looking at the arrow, and that's pointed to the asteroid belt, which I think has a lot to do with debris, okay, which is a possibility. There's a couple possibilities here. I'm not quite sure exactly what that means, but looking at where Earth is positioned and Mercury, and if you haven't followed the story about CRISPR, how the plan is transhumanism, because people would not be able to survive, and they're looking at being more connected, meaning people, who knows what the outcome here is. I'm not quite sure where that's going to go, but super volcano, let's go there. Okay, now if you have watched other reports, this is obviously a plant, chlorophyll, which obviously will not survive this amount of magma. The magma chambers are predicted to have the force of what the supervolcano now predicts 1,000 times stronger than Mount St. Helens. Mount St. Helens blew in 1980. And another image of molten lava. Very neat images, by the way. I mean, that's definitely lava there. And while that looks nice, it's another story to be in ground zero of this. So this is another image of what molten lava looks like. Just a thought to illustrate the point that you can see where the grass obviously is covered, and all plant life, chlorophyll, anything that would ever be able to exist in it wouldn't exist. So let's go to the reports here. This report is from Fox in Montana, and these are the articles that Yellowstone quakes, warm swells to 1,100 quakes within 2 weeks. Okay, that's not the record, but I think they may have broke the record, because I believe there was one day there was over 200 quakes, and we're talking small quakes, meaning this is making the region more unstable. Truckee, California area shakes. 28 earthquakes are registered in Sierra Mountains. Not Truckee, that's Lake Tahoe. And this is the area in which would be affected if you were look at an explosion, and this is the region where the ash cloud, or the ash bed as they refer to, and going as far as to Texas, over 6 inches of ash. And it's a lot different because you're looking at a couple other things, and I will get to that here. Let's look at a more color-coded image of that. Okay, so you look at the areas that would be directly affected, and then that pink area, okay, which is probably the secondary area, and the outside region. But all these areas here are significant, and this is going to be if and when this does blow, it's going to be very significant. It'll be a worldwide event. Okay, this is the magma chamber, and that's what I was referring to when I stated that when you look at how much magma is at the below the surface and the explosion and other factors here. You look at the scientific explanation to it. But scientists and top military officials, I have a personal friend who's a Navy SEAL, um, and I also have friends that know friends, and they're field commanders, and they wouldn't be warning this. Okay, they wouldn't be watching this. This is a serious, serious event. No need to get worried right now, but I have to say I can't report on something unless somebody tells me directly, and without going too much further than that, this is it's a possibility it could blow. Now, that's not to say that it's going to happen right now, but you have to think in terms right now if it were to blow tonight, okay? Just that's the sense of urgency I need to think of. I mean, what will we do today, okay? I can't go into what ifs, could have, shoulda, woulda. I can't do that. I just look at what are you doing right now? Are you prepared for that? And what have you done? Do you have certain supplies? Like I'll put more information, like the nuclear winter, volcanism. These are terms you want to get familiar with. What a nuclear winter would be like, how to survive the initial blasts and the area affected, and then what would happen to survive it. Now, I also heard this report. Again, I'll put more information below in the description box because I don't want to go into all the details, because I think these reports you need to watch these videos, okay? Because it'll give you information I might miss, okay? When they're looking at what the Yellowstone refugees is, the label that's been used, that they would have agreements that where people would be able to relocate. My concern is that at this point, I don't know who would be, unless you're moving out of the area now. I mean, those areas are affected. People are going to have, there's going to be a mass casualties. I mean, it is that way. And I don't know. I live in the Pennsylvania region, and I've been to Truckee, California, and Apple Valley. And when you hear about the fires that are lighting up parts of that area, okay. And I was up there. It's been over 10 years ago, but I was really shocked at the devastation of what wildfires can do. So, and there's been an increase of wildfires, and a lot of people who've ever moved, who got out of the area, were smart to do that. And I would say that if you have an opportunity to move out of the region, the areas directly affected, you're going to save yourself a lot of problems. And you don't know what that outcome would be. So if you have a way to relocate for a short term or long term, I would say long term, just leave it at that. But I'm thinking about what you would do today. I'm not thinking about waiting for it to happen. I'm thinking right now. Okay? So that you just know what to do. And I'm in Pennsylvania, and the kind of effect that this would have for somebody that lives in Pennsylvania, this is from a top military commander. We would be affected. We would have 2 inches of ash, meaning we would feel the effects of it on the back end. And that depends on the solar winds. There's a couple other factors involved. But we're in Pennsylvania, so we're not even really in that region, that color-coded region that I just illustrated you. In fact, let me show you here. This color-coded area could illustrate that really. For those of you who can see where Pittsburgh is over here, Washington, D.C., we would still have a couple inches of ash cloud over here, okay? That we're outside of the yellow area. I don't know if what they would call that. We'll just look at ground zero, but this is, again, another image I wanted to show you again. That's the region. Now, over on the west coast, they call it the caldera, and that's in Idaho. I'm not familiar with all this, so again, this is like me just taking a chance here. But the caldera, which is the west gate, and that's in Idaho. I find that very interesting, okay? I read the Bible, okay? So when they bring up words like west gate, I'm thinking there's a gateway, and I don't know I don't want to say anything, okay, without, it's going to sound ridiculous if I say any more, okay? So I really want you to refer to the other videos, because there's people with the ability to report it differently, and obviously, if I don't know If I don't know something, I'm not going to report on it. I just know what I was told, okay? And when you have a top military official tell you that they are seriously concerned, and then you hear it over and over again, wholeheartedly, I cannot ignore that, okay? And I know people, and my brother lives in California, and I love a lot of my friends and family very dearly, and they kind of blow this stuff off, and then what happens is they debunk what I have to say, and then they'll be like, you told us not to do this, and we did it anyway. This is not about what I told you. It's, you got to do your homework. You got to know what you're dealing with, just like anyone else. If there was a flash flood here in this region, we just went through a major flash flood. No one could have saw that coming. It came, and actually, I almost missed it, but I was up late at night, like I am right now, and I found out my friends, their house was flooded out, and it was no joke. Okay. So things like this, obviously, they didn't see a flash flood coming, but it happened. And a few people could have been in really serious danger. And due to the quick actions of those who were just on alert, sometimes like the light bulb goes off and you're in, safety mode, okay? So I think some of us automatically are gifted in that area. And, thank God for those people that know how to do something like that in a rescue, because some people, they wouldn't know how to react. But I know if I see a flood coming, I'm going to be bolting up the steps or finding the nearest roof, I guess, and we don't own any helicopters or planes here, so, good luck. But in this case, the problem I have with a couple things regarding this weather, because you could back this up with anyone who pays attention. If you're flying into an ash cloud, it's going to mess up the instruments, okay? Anyone that's ever flown. This is not me speaking. I'm not a pilot, but I know this just from listening to several of these reports, and I'm just picking stuff off. Again, you can back it up. I know some people would love to throw me under the bus for this, but I'm just repeating what I've learned from these reports. You can glean as much information from it as you like. When I hear that the instruments will be knocked off, it would be no different than what happened to JFK Jr. when he was going into that area and his instruments stopped working. Especially if you're flying, a plane into these areas. A lot of people who fly or, have a pilot's license, they would know that instruments stop working, and depending on what an ash cloud would do, I'm sure people that are in that region, they know that they can't fly in that area because it would mess up their instruments or radiation. These are factors. And when I heard this report about the solar winds, again, I've been doing my homework here, and the solar winds and the radiation have a lot to do with affecting the radiation. In fact, if you know what kind of turbulence you would go through, typically in a storm, you would know that also that would affect it. So all these things are factors. There are things that would affect the ability to fly. So when you're on the ground, different story. And these elaborate bunkers, and some people are already well prepared for something like this. I've heard that too. So it would be up to us over here on the surface acting quickly. And I would say this would be a massive rescue. And if anyone was thinking ahead of time, they would say, well, I don't want to see people suffer unnecessarily, so how would you prepare for this? Well, thinking about those who have been on missions where, let's refer to Truckee, California, because I know a little bit about that, and I talked to people in that area, what they had to do to, rescue homes from burning to the ground. Well, of course, they had small jet airplanes fly in, and they would release these, I want to say water bombs, but it's probably a better name for it than that. And they would ignite, be able to keep the fire out. I don't know what would change as far as an ash cloud, though. Okay, so those are things that I would like to think about, like the ability to breathe, radiation, having medical equipment. Some of the medical equipment I would want to have on hand is anything that would be able to, iodine. prepackaged food. It's better to keep prepackaged food, especially if you don't want it to be contaminated. Water could be contaminated, so having water that's sealed, and there's probably other ways to look in how they would be able to store water, storable food and water, that it would not be contaminated. I served in the military, so we learned about biological warfare. Was part of the training. So they would have a special, you would want to have a special clothing on. You would have to have special shoes, and the other factors like volcanism, nuclear winter. These are things I would think about, like wearing warm clothes, being dressed properly all the time. When I was 19 years old, I had no idea that we would have to go through biological training, but that was one of the things, like we'd have to wear the mask, and that we had to go in and out of a gas chamber just if we were in the middle of a rescue. So having proper gear on, having headgear, always keep your headgear on, make sure everything's secure. Keeping, I like the fact that you can wear cargo clothes, because if you have water repellent cargo clothes and you have plenty of them, that's the kind of clothing you want to be wearing all the time. Anyone that argues that you're wearing cargo or clothing, you're wearing it for the fact that you're going to be obviously in weather conditions that possibly could be, unsafe. So you want to have proper clothes. You want to make sure all your buttons are sealed up so nothing catches. You want to make sure that you have drawstrings and certain type of clothing that you can rip off. You got to learn some basic things, tourniquet. Things like this are really essential. And when I'm thinking of a tourniquet, I would want to know how I can get rope or paracord, and I would want to be able to make a splint if somebody broke a leg. Shoes. One of the things I learned about this in the military, and I hopefully some of you can take something from this if you're not familiar. The kind of shoes you're wearing, it's a difference of your life. I mean, if you have the best, Birkenstocks are one of the best shoes. I found out this firsthand. But if you have good shoes and your feet are covered, protected on a regular basis, and you always keep them dry, put, sandwich bags, always keep plastic bags, because you want to stay dry. You want your feet to be able to be dry all the time. It's going to be better for those who have to walk or have to get to wherever they need to go. Having a supply. Your car right now needs to be packed. Okay? You have to have some kind of food supply and essentials. These are some basic things. Nothing that you probably wouldn't have heard of if you were doing emergency preparedness. Just getting a checklist, doing this. It's a difference of life and death. Like I said earlier, I didn't plan to be into rescues and things like that, but for someone who's never been on a rescue or haven't been familiar with it, this is the time to have maneuvers. I'm saying it now, not that this could happen today, but now that we see these reports, it's time to go into training mode. And I'm giving you the quickest, best way I can. For those who follow my channel, or anyone that knows me, knows that you better have maneuvers. I would carefully screen who's on your team. Make sure you have each other's back. Ranger buddy system, hugely important. You cannot assume that you're going to survive this alone. I know there are lone survivors. Some people, it's not because of anything they did, but sometimes if you have bad communication, it's time to get on track with things. Learn to communicate. Get effective quickly and get your point across. Let's not go into long stories anymore. I'm only done this so that some of you have something referred to. Okay, so that said, you want to be able to go 1, 2, and 3. You want to get through maneuvers. I want you guys to at least get your exercise and fitness in on a regular basis. Make sure it's a priority. Top fitness, mental clarity, more prepared. It all kind of makes sense when you're in the middle of an event. When you're confronted with an emergency, you have to factor in there are going to be people that are upset and emotional. So the last thing you want to do is get anyone upset, and especially during a crisis, okay? These are the things that we learn firsthand. Unfortunately, some of us learn the hard way, and I would recommend this because we had family crises before. So that being said, communication, having map reading, being able to know how to use what are they, sorry, how to use a compass. That's why I called it Compass New Media, by the way. For real, because it is news. It's north, south, east, and west, okay? I was an epiphany from some of us. But the compass, reading a map and compass. Now, for somebody who's not familiar with reading a map, what if you have an object in your eye and you can't see? So these are things that I need to think about, like wear special protection, goggles, night vision. Probably the most important thing, if I was to go into like an area where there's a lot less visibility, I would want to have night vision. This is big, okay? Night vision is going to be a lifesaver, okay? Meaning you have special eye protective and eye gear, okay? So if I was to think right now, if I wanted to go out and buy something, I would want to have the proper clothes, shoes, and things like that. You could probably figure that one out. But what would you order online? Night vision. You'd have food supply. Those are the things I think about. The other things you can do is just cut down trees and start your supply. Make sure you have some trees right now that are alive that you can cut down and you can learn how to, weave a house together. Other things I would think about, if you're on a surface, and what if you're not in an area where there's any access to food or any of those things, and you didn't prepare? You're going to be in a panic. You're going to be thinking, okay, we're done. You're not going to want to survive without food. You're not going to want to be in a panic. So these people that are the laggers, the last minute people, they're the ones that are going to be carted away, literally. And that's why I wouldn't be in shock right now. I would want to be the most prepared and in a position to assist. So make sure you have a stockpile of food. Make sure you have like gear on. Just if you don't have food, make sure you network with a group of people. Have a meeting place. I would have something in the works. Make sure you have designated meeting spots. If you don't, and you're on your own and you're not talking to anybody and just assuming that you ran out of gas, you better hope that the community is networked and they're ready, because they know that there's going to be a lot of outsiders. There are a lot of people that are just going to start running and moving in different directions. So I would want to be in a perfect ideal position where you don't have to be driving on the roads at this time or trying to run and get food. I think at this point, most people that are paying attention already are prepared. So if you're already prepared for this, which I don't think at this point, anyone that's not prepared, I just think that's kind of, they're kind of late in the game. It's not too late, but I'm just saying, by now people have watched plenty of movies on Armageddon. And when I looked at the news earlier today, I just realized, okay, all right, looking at what's going on and looking at the resources that other countries have, they're going to want to lean on the stronger countries. And that's typically what happens. That's why you're only as strong as your weakest link. Remember that TV show when they said the weakest link? You're only as strong as your weakest link. So if you're weak, you have somebody they call it a flank, and your weak link, your weak side. Say people are right-handed. My left side is going to be my weak side, okay? So I'm going to want to know what's going on with my weakest link. I would want my weakest people to be, it's a better way to gauge how prepared you are is the people that are the weakest among you. Even if somebody's in a hospital bed, if they know how to instruct and they know how to do something, they could be on a two-way. You know what I mean? A two-way radio. Everyone is very useful in this. So you're only as strong as your weakest people. Young kids especially. If they're quick to help and assist and they're listening, again, you're only as strong as your weakest. There are a lot of examples where a lot of people, if they're put in that situation, they'll respond correctly. And I just think that a lot of times when they personally screen certain individuals, they know that certain people have certain gifts and assets that you'd be surprised what people can do in emergency. You'd be surprised at what young kids can do and how good they are to adapt. The kids can adapt. The thing is I'm concerned about the middle-aged adults, the ones that are on medications. If they haven't looked at natural resources or home remedies, write down in an index card the things you could do outside of not having your medicine. Obviously, if you have a diabetic condition, there's some things you need to think of. Turmeric, Other things that actually help people with diabetes, well, you probably might be in the healthiest shape by the time you get away from all the other chemicals and products there. Some of you ingest, you're going to be eating MREs like what we have learned in the military. And let me tell you, if you are worried about your waistline, it's a little too late, because those things are packed with at least 5,000 calories. You're not going to be thinking about a diet. Okay, so with that said, I like the fact that I illustrated that point, because diet is out the window when you eat at MRE. And what do I mean by that? Meals ready to eat. You should try them. They're packed with calories, by the way. Okay, so you want to eat in the morning, okay? You make sure your shoes are on correctly. Wear some, what are the sandwich bags? I mean, you don't know what the elements you'll be in. You eat your food in the morning. You make sure you're prepared for whatever could happen. You don't know what the day will bring. Make sure you get your Bible and read your Bible. You'd be so surprised what can happen in the midst of a crisis, like Jesus coming. So that's just a tidbit. That was in the scripture, 1 Thessalonians 4:16. For your children not of darkness, but your children of the light. So the thief will not overcome you the darkness will not overcome you like a thief in the night, okay? And Luke 28:21, because I recited that one too. When you see these things come to pass, stand up and look up, for your redemption draweth nigh. Oh, one more scripture, and then we'll wrap it up. And that is in Luke. And pray that you're worthy to escape these things. And that's called the harpazo. Meaning Jesus could come anytime, today. I'm open today. I told some of you all that a lot of people want to throw people on the bus, and they said that the rapture doesn't exist. Well, I have to tell you, the Jesus that I know is going to rescue his kids. And if I was a parent, I would want to rescue my kids. And I don't know, but there are a lot of things going on. There's also this prediction of a false Messiah, or this false event. I really don't know all that. I do know this. If you have any questions about your salvation and you have any issues you need to hash out with somebody, I hope you've already done it. I hope you prayed for each other and apologize and get some things right with one another, okay? Because when Jesus comes, you're not going to want to be doing any of those things that a lot of people are maybe caught up in right now. They're not concerned with Jesus, but they certainly will when they see that lightning flash from the east to the west, okay? Meaning, like lightning, so will Jesus return, like a lightning bolt. That was pretty much, I'm sorry, that was my version of it. That's my translation. You don't want my translation. I'm just saying, this is the kind of stuff that I don't laugh at this at all. Please don't think I'm insensitive. But I know a lot of people make fun at that whole rapture theory. I don't know. When I'm in the middle of an event, I'm going to be thinking about where Jesus is. So that's oftentimes when people get deceived the most. So just be ahead of it and keep praying. That's probably the best way to go.